All right, diving in today, folks. We're going deep on something pretty crucial, I think. The Philippines and the socioeconomic kind of fault lines running through it. And we're going to look specifically at the role faith communities are playing, especially the church.
Yeah.
And we know you all, our listeners, come here for the good stuff quickly.
Right.
The deep dive right to the heart of it. So that's our aim.
Absolutely.
And the source material you all sent in for this one's really powerful, both the challenges and the glimmers of hope. It's quite something.
Yeah, it really captures that sort of that tension, right?
Yeah.
The vulnerability, but also the incredible resilience in these communities. So if you're looking for that, that kind of quick but deep understanding of this a complex situation, this is absolutely the place to be.
Yeah.
We're going to cut through the noise, get to the core challenges that these socioeconomic disparities create in the Philippines, and more importantly, look at how churches are engaging with this reality in some pretty amazing ways, I got to say. Our mission here is, well, pretty straightforward, to give you a clear picture of the landscape, the innovative solutions being put into action. Because your sources, they cover it all, from the nitty-gritty struggles to these really inspiring stories of ingenuity and resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's unpack this, right? Like right off the bat, the picture that emerges from these sources is it's the Philippines as a nation of contrasts, right?
Uh-huh.
You have these booming economic centers, and then often just a stone's throw away, communities mired in deep poverty,
Yeah,
lack of opportunities, scarce resources. I mean, it's striking.
it is.
And the sources really emphasize this. It's not just statistics.
Right.
It's lived reality for a huge portion of the population.
Yeah, and that's a crucial point because these disparities, they don't just exist in a vacuum, right?
Right.
They had a ripple effect. They directly impact churches, mission workers, everything.
Yeah.
Financial stability of a congregation, even how people connect with their faith.
Yeah.
It's all influenced by these socioeconomic conditions. It's foundational, this challenge. And to understand the solutions, you got to understand this core issue first.
Absolutely. So let's get into some of these core challenges then. And one that really jumps out from the sources is the financial pressure on, well, just establishing churches, especially in those most vulnerable barangays, those neighborhoods. It's a direct consequence, isn't it, when families are struggling just to put food on the table, supporting a pastor full-time or maintaining a church building. It's a massive hurdle.
Absolutely. The sources talk about inconsistent tithing, and it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
When basic needs, food, shelter, healthcare, when those are your priorities, understandably, supporting a church financially, well, it takes a back seat.
Yeah, completely. And this is where we see, traditional Western church funding models, they break down.
They really...
They don't translate. It forces, as the sources point out, a radical rethinking.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't just replicate those models in a context where that financial capacity just isn't there.
Yeah.
It really requires, and this is what's exciting, is that it compels a totally different imagination of what church community can be, how it can thrive without being so reliant on traditional financial structures.
And it's not just finances either, right?
Right.
The sources also point to limited access to formal education as a major factor.
Definitely.
And with literacy rates varying so much across regions, you can't rely on, just handing someone a Bible or a written study guide.
You can't?
It just won't work for discipleship in a lot of areas.
Yeah, and this has implications for theological training as well, right?
Huge, yeah.
You can't just equip someone with, a stack of books if they can't readily engage with them.
Exactly. So the sources emphasize this need for adaptable strategies.
Yes.
And it's fascinating to see the solutions, right? The power of oral storytelling, right? Mentorship, apprenticeship style, tapping into those traditional ways of passing down knowledge.
Yeah, because that's still so strong, right?
Yeah.
That oral tradition is how communities have always learned, shared, and preserved their stories, their values.
Yeah. And then another thing that really struck me in reading through this material was the impact of migration.
Oh, huge, yeah.
So you have people from rural areas seeking work in cities or even overseas, right?
Absolutely.
And this constant movement leads to a lot of turnover in church communities, which makes, sustained discipleship really tricky.
It does. It's almost like, I don't know, trying to cultivate a garden when the soil keeps shifting beneath you.
It is, yeah.
And this, again, forces us to think differently about how we approach discipleship. Churches can't rely on that consistent long-term attendance we might see elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's about nurturing faith in these dynamic, ever-changing environments.
And then layering on top of all this are these incredibly urgent health and social welfare issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
The sources don't shy away from the realities: limited healthcare access, the prevalence of malnutrition. I mean, these are heavy burdens.
They are. And it's not just individual struggles either.
Yeah.
They weaken the fabric of entire communities. It makes it so hard for people to focus on anything beyond, basic survival, the health of their families.
Yeah.
It's all consuming.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The sources, they don't just dwell on the difficulties. There's this brilliant turn towards how these very disparities, these obstacles, can become opportunities for what they call gospel-centered transformation through what they call holistic strategies. And I think that's so key.
It is. It's about reframing the narrative.
Yeah.
Not just seeing the need, but seeing the potential within that need.
Exactly. So let's start with economic empowerment.
Right.
And it's fascinating how the church is, really evolving into this center for skill development, for economic upliftment. It's not just a place of worship. It's so much more.
Yeah, it's that proactive stance,
Yeah.
right? Instead of just offering aid, it's equipping individuals to be self-reliant. The sources detail these incredible initiatives: microfinance programs for small business startups, vocational training, farming, handicrafts, and this really interesting concept of Great Commission companies.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about those.
These are businesses, right, founded and run by Christians, but with this explicit aim, not just to make profit, but to make disciples
Wow.
and to serve their community.
So it's like baked into their DNA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The mission. It's not an afterthought. It's the core. Whether it's employing people from marginalized groups or funding local ministries, it's a really fascinating model.
That is really fascinating. And I was particularly drawn to the example given, the church in a fishing community, partnering with Christian business owners to actually provide fishing equipment, boats, the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a great example, right?
It's not just a handout. It's teaching a man to fish, as the saying goes.
Exactly, and weaving discipleship into that process.
Yeah.
It's recognizing that people's spiritual well-being, it's deeply tied to their material circumstances.
Yeah.
Addressing one often opens the door to addressing the other.
Absolutely. Okay, and then there's the whole aspect of contextualized education and discipleship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is where it gets really creative.
It does.
Because given the limitations of formal schooling in some areas, churches are coming up with these incredibly resourceful solutions.
They are.
Literacy programs using Bible stories,
Yeah.
oral discipleship through storytelling,
Yeah.
songs. These are brilliant adaptations.
Absolutely. It's recognizing that the power of the oral tradition in these communities where literacy levels might be varied, it's still so strong.
Yeah.
Storytelling, songs, dramas even.
Yeah.
These are ways to communicate biblical truths that are engaging,
Yeah.
memorable.
Yeah.
And there's this example, I love this one, the solar-powered audio Bibles, recorded in local dialects, reaching these remote barangays without internet or electricity.
It's amazing.
Isn't it? It's leveraging technology, but in a way that's perfectly suited to the environment and culture.
Exactly. All right, so moving on then to sustainable church models.
Okay.
And here, the focus shifts, right? It's less about relying on external support and more about fostering self-reliance within those low-income communities.
Right.
And this is where you see these really practical solutions emerging, encouraging house churches over expensive buildings,
Makes sense, yeah.
training bivocational pastors so they have other jobs as well, really reducing the financial burden on the congregation.
Yeah, it's tapping into that inherent resourcefulness, isn't it?
It is.
The sources even talk about community tithing.
Oh, what's that?
Not money, but service-based giving. Offering crops, fish, skills, whatever someone can contribute. It's beautiful.
That is amazing.
It's meeting the church's needs in a way that aligns with the community's daily life, There's this image that sticks with me, this church meeting in a farmer's bamboo home, just seamlessly integrating worship into the fabric of the village. It's really quite something.
And then lastly, under these holistic strategies, we have compassion ministries.
Right.
And here, the sources really underscore this idea that the gospel message, it truly takes root when it meets people's tangible needs.
It's that love in action, right?
Yeah.
It's not just words, it's deeds.
It's medical outreach, feeding programs, crisis response during disasters. It's the church becoming the hands and feet of Jesus, in a really practical sense.
Exactly. And these ministries, they do so much more than just provide aid.
Yeah.
They build trust. They demonstrate Christ's love in such a tangible way.
Absolutely. Okay, now the sources then go deeper, exploring this concept of the weight of poverty, and they paint a pretty stark picture of the daily grind, the struggle for survival in these impoverished barangays.
Hmm.
It's constant uncertainty and this lack of financial stability. It affects everything: access to education, healthcare, even just basic well-being.
That's a heavy burden.
It's
Yeah,
a lot to carry.
it is.
Yeah.
And it puts things into perspective, right?
Yeah.
The need to survive, for many, it eclipses everything else,
Yeah.
including, perhaps, that initial spiritual exploration.
And this is where, as the sources call it, incarnational mission becomes crucial.
Absolutely. The church can't just deliver a message. It has to be an agent of transformation,
Yeah.
addressing both the spiritual and the very real material needs that people face. It's about like embodying that being with alongside the doing for.
Yeah. And the sources highlight these amazing examples of the church stepping into this role, being that pillar of hope, right?
Yeah.
You have the Manna Ministry offering meals before Sunday school, the church school hybrid providing free education, the livelihood programs empowering women through, like, creating traditional textiles.
Beautiful.
These are life-changing interventions. Even something as simple as a church helping to build a community well,
Yeah.
providing access to clean water. It has a ripple effect.
It does. It shows that the gospel isn't just an abstract concept.
Yeah.
It's a tangible force for good.
And that takes us to this crucial concept of holistic ministry, which the sources really lay out beautifully. It's that intentional weaving together, right?
Yeah.
Spiritual care with the very real physical, emotional, economic realities of people's lives. You can't separate them.
You can't. And as sources point out, Jesus himself was the ultimate model for this. He didn't just preach. He healed the sick, he fed the hungry, he welcomed the marginalized. It was a ministry of the whole person.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And churches today, they're called to do the same.
Absolutely, to offer that comprehensive support.
And the sources make this great distinction between charity and empowerment.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's such an important nuance.
It is.
Because while charity is important, especially in those immediate crisis situations, holistic ministry, it goes deeper. It aims to equip people, give them the tools and the skills for self-sufficiency,
It's about restoring dignity,
Okay.
helping them build a sustainable future for themselves, for their families, for their communities. It's teaching someone to fish, not just giving them a fish.
Exactly. And the ripple effect of this, as the sources point out, it's powerful.
It is.
Education leads to better jobs. Improved healthcare leads to better well-being.
Absolutely.
Livelihood training creates stable income. And all of this impacts not just the individual, but their family, their community.
And ultimately, it opens hearts.
Yeah.
When people experience that consistent, tangible love, they're more receptive to the deeper truths of the gospel.
And for this to truly work, this holistic ministry, it has to be, as the sources point out, a long-term commitment.
That has to be, yeah.
Deeply embedded in the community. Not just a one-off event.
No.
It's about building sustainable programs, local partnerships, empowering leaders from within those communities.
Exactly. It's creating an ecosystem where faith and action work together, where the hope of the gospel isn't just about the future, but about restoring dignity and flourishing right now.
And this leads to the next key point that the sources highlight, which is empowerment through partnership.
Yeah.
It's acknowledging that lasting change, well, it can't happen in isolation.
It can.
It requires collaboration.
Yeah.
Government agencies, NGOs, businesses, community members, all working together.
It takes a village,
It really does. And partnerships, they bring so much to the table.
They do.
They bring resources, wider reach, better solutions, greater sustainability. The sources even draw a parallel to, public-private partnerships, and even to Nehemiah rebuilding Jerusalem in the Bible.
Yeah, that's a great connection. It highlights that shared responsibility, right?
Yeah.
The collective action.
Okay, building on this then, the sources talk about fostering resilience and hope. And it's so crucial because these communities, they already have this incredible strength within them.
They do.
They face so much, adapted, persevered. Ministry, in a sense, is about nurturing that existing resilience.
Absolutely. It's about empowering people to be active participants in their own transformation, in the transformation of their community.
Yeah. And they give examples, providing skill-building platforms, vocational training, leadership development, encouraging local entrepreneurship through things like microfinance, mentorship.
Even just celebrating small victories,
Yeah,
sharing stories of positive change. Those things can have a huge impact.
they can. And as the sources say, a community infused with hope, that's a community that can thrive even amidst ongoing challenges.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, now, we got to talk about this because it's a fascinating turn in the deep dive.
Yeah.
The exploration of the existing spiritual ecosystem in the Philippines.
Yeah,
And it's more nuanced than just a simple Christian label, right?
it is. Yeah.
The sources delve into the reality of traditional folk beliefs, animistic practices, and what they call syncretism, where Christianity has sort of blended with indigenous rituals, ancestral veneration. It's a very layered picture.
It is, yeah. And the sources call it a plurality of beliefs. In many areas, it's not this clear-cut either.
Yeah.
It's this vibrant mix of Catholic traditions, ancient rituals, respect for spirits, nature.
It's a living spirituality interwoven with their culture, their history.
Yeah, absolutely. And within this landscape, the sources highlight those who are often unreached or marginalized.
Right.
Particularly indigenous groups, those in remote areas who might have had minimal contact with, traditional Christianity.
Yeah.
Their spiritual identity is deeply rooted in their ancestral customs.
Yeah, and engaging with these communities, it requires, well, an extra level of sensitivity,
Absolutely.
cultural understanding, so long-term commitment to building trust.
And that's where this principle of contextualization comes in.
Absolutely crucial. It's communicating the gospel in a way that resonates with the local customs, the languages, the worldviews, but without, and this is key, without diluting the core message.
Yeah, it's a fine line.
It is. It's about building bridges, understanding, truly valuing that unique cultural heritage of each community.
And at the heart of this, the sources emphasize building trust through relationship.
That's the foundation, yeah.
It's investing the time to understand the community's history, listening to their stories, demonstrating care through your actions, not just your words.
Exactly. It's a journey of mutual respect,
Yeah.
understanding, growth.
Okay, so what are some practical strategies then for engaging with this complex spiritual ecosystem?
Right.
The sources talk about equipping church planters and ministry workers with strong cultural intelligence, right? Providing training in the local history, language, traditions, so they can engage in meaningful dialogue.
Because that cultural intelligence, it's key for effective communication.
Yeah.
For building trust, rapport allows them to navigate those cultural nuances with sensitivity.
Absolutely. And they also emphasize collaborative engagement, right?
Yeah.
Working with local leaders, creating outreach programs that are respectful of traditions, things like participating in festivals, using storytelling, even engaging in interfaith dialogue.
It's about meeting people where they are,
Right is, yeah.
honoring their cultural context.
And again, that idea of holistic ministry, it's just as vital here.
Absolutely. It builds credibility. It demonstrates love in action. And that opens hearts.
Yeah. So it's this beautiful weaving together of the practical and the spiritual.
It is.
Oh.
And ultimately, the sources frame this entire process as a journey of mutual transformation,
I love that.
where the gospel, those timeless truths, can actually complement and enrich a community's existing spiritual heritage. It's not about erasing or replacing, it's about thoughtful integration.
Yeah. So to bring it all together, our deep dive today has really shown us how the socioeconomic disparities in the Philippines, while they present huge challenges, they also offer these incredible opportunities for transformative ministry.
They do.
And we've explored how these holistic approaches, addressing both practical and spiritual needs, are crucial for sustainable change.
And the importance of partnership, right?
Yeah.
Working with the community, cultural sensitivity, those are non-negotiables.
Absolutely. So for you, our listener, always looking for those aha moments.
I hope you've gotten a sense of just how innovative, how resourceful these churches and organizations are in adapting to these realities, turning obstacles into pathways for hope.
Because there's so much to learn from their experiences, right?
Yeah.
Their creativity, their resilience.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you to ponder. How might this integration of faith and action, so clearly seen in the Philippines, how might it offer valuable lessons for addressing disparities and fostering change in other parts of the world?
Yeah, think about your own community,
Yeah.
your own sphere of influence. What can we take from this?
It's a powerful question. It makes you think about the power of holistic engagement, understanding those diverse cultural and spiritual landscapes around us.
And we really encourage you, keep exploring these themes.
Yeah,
Reflect on the impact faith communities can have in addressing these complex challenges, not just in the Philippines, but globally.
absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Take care.